Welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, it is spring election day, and we continue our Your Voice, Your Vote coverage now. Again, outside of that presidential primary, the only statewide questions for voters are those two constitutional amendments, one to prohibit use of private grant money, the other to say only legal election workers can administer elections. All other questions on the ballot are municipal elections and local school referendums. And we are joined now by a familiar face, J.R. Ross, the editor of WisPolitics.com. So everybody likes to guess about spring election turnouts. What would be your guess, J.R., on what kind of turnout we'll see today now that there's a winter storm blasting a large portion of the state?
I would say that's not going to help. I did see a number, for example, there are already 358,000 roughly absentee ballot requests that were made for spring elections. So, that's a good, healthy number to start with. But we're probably not going to see like 2016 where you had, I think, 2 million votes cast because you had active primaries for president for Republicans and Democrats. Remember, Donald Trump and Joe Biden have both secured enough delegates to win their nominations already. Today is just kind of like going through the motions in some ways, but what we're watching is, like with Biden, uninstructed, how big sure the vote does that get? Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, are still on the ballot in Wisconsin. What's their share? There's really more of a sign of how fractured the bases might be. And I'm not sure how much that drives people to the polls on a not great day in April for Wisconsinites to be out and about.
All right, on the polls, though, and what I would assume the legislature hope drives people out is those two constitutional amendments. I'm curious if you can take us through the backstory. When did you first start hearing rumblings in Madison that this is the route the legislature, at least the GOP-led portion of it, was trying to go and get these questions onto the spring ballot?
Right after Governor Evers vetoed legislation that had similar aims. So we've kind of gotten to a point where it's government by constitutional amendment in the Capitol because Republicans have been frustrated now for 5+ years where Governor Evers has vetoed a string of their initiatives. Now, Governor Evers will tell you that he doesn't agree with those things and they didn't work with him trying to reach compromise. They try to force things down him that he didn't like. So either way, Governor Evers has vetoed a lot of bills. Actually, he's now up to 188, which is the record for a governor in Wisconsin history, most bills vetoed. But as he's knocked out these proposals one by one, he's always going to turn to constitutional amendments because the governor can't stop them. Remember, if you go through back-to-back sessions of the legislature, then it goes to the voters for final approval or consideration. So this is their way around Governor Evers' veto pen.
Was there a specific aim at getting it on the spring ballot, JR, when, as we just talked about, turnout is not as typically high as it is in the other ballots, although there will be constitutional amendments coming again in August and again in November?
Yeah, and they're trying to space them out. For one thing, they're trying to space them out. What lawmakers have found is if you have lots of language on a ballot and voters get confused, they may not like what you're trying to do and might vote no. So they need to keep it split up a little bit to make it easier to digest. What's interesting is with these amendments, I'm seeing more effort by both sides to engage voters on this. Go back, it's been a few years, but there was a constitutional amendment to eliminate the state treasurer. Republicans kind of assumed, hey, nobody needs this job, we can go ahead and get rid of it, and people would say yes. There was actually a concerted effort to save the treasurer's office. It worked, and Republicans are kind of stunned, like, well, what did we do wrong? Well, they didn't engage voters, and it didn't educate them. We're seeing money being spent by groups trying to put the word out about what view they have of these things. We're seeing the Republican Party of Wisconsin urging people on social media to vote yes to these amendments, the Democratic Party to vote no. I'm seeing conservative groups pushing their followers to, again, vote yes, liberal ones to vote no. So it's actually more engaged with this amendment than others that I've seen where people kind of like to assume that the voters will follow the right quote unquote direction.
Let's turn our attention now to, speaking, you've mentioned the word engaged. All the Trump followers are engaged up here tonight as the former president makes his appearance in Green Bay. And you reported this morning, it's come out that Senate candidate Eric Hovde will be here. I'm curious, he doesn't have a challenger as of right now, so does he need to be aligning himself with the former president this early in the race without someone to beat in the primary in August?
Well, there's a dance he has to do. And there is a UMass point student who's declared for that office. So there is expected to be the Republican on the ballot right now, but there's not a real somebody who's going to raise a lot of money and challenge Eric Hovde at this point, do we expect him to run for his money, right? It looks like he is the person that was coalescing around. But for Hovde, the question is, how do you just dance with Donald Trump? Because Trump is the base. But Trump has also driven away suburban voters, especially places like around Milwaukee.
And even up
for
here.
Hovde, yeah. And for Hovde, how do you keep the Trump base, but also attract the suburban voter? Because in talking to people around Madison, one of the keys this fall for him is going to be, what happens if Trump and Biden are, let's say, 48-46? I'm not predicting either way for those two gentlemen, right? Let's just say they're both below 50%. Where do the voters go, right? Go back to 2016. Ron Johnson was seeking re-election for the first time. He got 50% of the vote against Russ Feingold. He outran Donald Trump
by a wide margin.
Somebody else do that? Yeah, it was like Trump's around 47% and change. Johnson at the 50. But again, if it's at 48-46 kind of margin, where do those voters go, and how can Hovde compete with Baldwin for those folks, because they know her? So if they're unhappy with her, that's good for Eric Hovde. But if they're okay with her, then that's probably where they might go. And honestly, when I talk to people about it, they're kind of guessing right now. It's hard to get a feel of like what November was going to be like for those voters, especially when you're talking about we call them the double haters. They hate Biden and hate Trump. What do they do this fall? I mean,
and do they show up, right?
Look like in a few months. Yeah.
And do they show up?
Really interesting.
All right. JR, thanks so much for the insight. We appreciate it on this election day.
Anytime.